Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Drinks by Design. We're going to be starting here shortly. Hello, welcome. If you're just tuning in, we've got a slideshow for you to enjoy while everybody joins us. Welcome to Drinks by Design. We're going to be starting shortly. Hello, for those of you that are just joining us. This is Drinks by Design. We're going to be starting in a couple of minutes. Welcome those of you that are just tuning in. We're going to be starting here in a little bit, couple minutes, and enjoy the slideshow of artistic portrayals of spirits and drinking over the years through art. Welcome, everybody. This is Drinks by Design. In about one more minute, we're going to get things started. If you'd like to let us know where you're joining us from, we have a chat box, and we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. Richmond, Portland, all right. San Diego, Hershey, Happy Valley, all right. Atlanta, keep them coming. Baltimore, Fort Lauderdale, Annapolis, Philadelphia. Altoona, whoa, they're coming in fast. All right, welcome everybody from all over. Looks like we've got a pretty good representation from all over the country. Chicago, Las Vegas, welcome. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Peter Margatai. I'm the past president of the Arts and Architecture Alumni Society Board. You have tuned in to Drinks by Design. I hope that's where you wanted to be, because that's where you are. We did this last year in 2021, and we had such a good time that we were delighted that the Alumni Association asked us to do it one more time. Since our group is comprised mostly of artists and designers, we really wanted art history to be portrayed in the concept, in the spirit of this. So that's why we had the slideshow put together, which represents how spirits and drinking has been a subject of art over many, many years. Tonight, you're going to be presented with five presenters, including myself, and all of us are either current or past members of the Arts and Architecture Alumni Society Board. One quick note before we really dive into it. This presentation is available in closed caption. So I'm going to read this to make sure that I get it correct. By clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of your Zoom video window and then clicking show subtitle, then you can customize your caption view by clicking the link provided in the chat box. I hope that made sense to those of you that are looking for closed caption. So I want to take a quick poll. I want to find out how many of you are here just watching the program tonight, and how many of you actually have the ingredients and the recipe in front of you and are actually going to be making the drink as it's presented. So go ahead, hopefully a participation poll pop-up opened up, and oh, I have a question here. Where's the recipe? The recipe book should have been sent as part of your registration. If it was not, then we will get it to you probably sometime after the program. So I am here to make the recipe right along. How about you? Then the second question we have is, which spirit did you come here? Oh, wait, what are the results? So most people, okay, we got, what is it, 70 to 83% are here just to watch and enjoy. So welcome. And we got about, was that 13 out of 83 are here to actually make it right along. So well done. This is gonna be fun. The other question we want to ask is, what is the spirit you're most interested in? Why are you tuning in? We have gin, bourbon, aperitif, bubbly, and vodka. Which of those are the ones that you really want to learn about? I am presenting gin, and that's going to be a really good one, but don't let that influence your answer. All right, what do we have? What are the results? Here we go. Bourbon. Oh, vodka. Bourbon's number one. Vodka is a close second. Gin, bubbly, and aperitif are all in there. Pretty close. So bourbon. I'm not surprised. Bourbon is a very popular spirit, and vodka is also a very popular spirit. So maybe this is somehow representative of like a global marketing effort. I don't know. But regardless, thank you for coming and participating, for those of you who are, and for those who are just watching for the entertainment aspect of it. So we're going to get things rolling with our art history alumnus, Kim Hendrickson. She's going to be teaching you how to prepare a drink that you may want to prepare before your next dinner party. So Kim, take it away.
Peter, thank you. And really thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Kim Hendrickson, and I'm a graduate from the Art History Department at Penn State. So tonight we're going to be learning about aperitifs. And aperitifs are meant to be a drink that you have before a meal, which is where this is coming from in the order of the evening tonight. So aperitifs, the name comes from the Latin word aperire, A-P-E-R-I-R-E, and they're essentially wines that are flavored with herbs, roots. Think of some type of historic medicinal, and that's really the sort of flavor profile that aperitifs generally have. They're generally bitter, they're modestly alcoholic, and they're pretty dry. Most of them are intended to be had on their own, like maybe in a rocks glass over ice on their own, or maybe with a little water. Some of them you might know, such as an Aperol Spritz, where you can have that with soda, or you can have that with champagne. So to start out with, the first aperitif, like formally made, was vermouth. And vermouth was started in Italy. It was originated in Turin, Italy in 1786. The first vermouth was a recipe that was made with white wine and the addition of 30 or more aromatic herbs and spices. That recipe still is made today. The name vermouth comes from the word vermut, from wormwood. It's spelled W-E-R-M-U-T, but it's pronounced vermouth. And if anybody has the Antica vermouth, this is actually the original recipe. They still make it. It's very popular, and it is a really, really good vermouth. It's one that is one of my favorites, and lo and behold, we had it here at our house. This is the sort of red vermouth that you would put in a Negroni. If anybody's a fan of Negronis, they're a 3-part drink. One part, this is a red sweet vermouth. 1 part Campari and 1 part gin over ice with an orange wedge. But as I mentioned, this is a sweet vermouth. This is a red vermouth. It comes from Italy. Following the success of the Italian sweet vermouth, there was a gentleman in France that decided he wanted to make a vermouth. And so Joseph Noy decided to make a white vermouth. White vermouths would be something like this. You'd find some by Martini and Rossi, Cinzano, Noy Prat. This is the sort of vermouth that you would put in a martini. So there's white vermouth, there's red vermouth. They have different flavor profiles. A white vermouth is more bitter. There's nutmeg and orange peel added to the white vermouth to give it its special flavor profile. But the funny thing is that all vermouths are made with white wine that's fortified. So even though we call them red and white vermouths, a red vermouth is not made with red wine, while a white vermouth would be made with red or white. They're all made with white wine. So the drink that we're going to make tonight is called a triple Menace. The triple Menace is made with 2 different aperitif spirits, Lié Blanc, and I have the Lié Blanc here, and another one that's called Suze. And this is the bottle of Suze. For those of you who are trying to make drinks along with us tonight, I have a feeling you might be more apt to make the Negroni versus the Triple Menace. I did discover that Suze is harder to come by. There's certainly more aperitifs that are common, popular, and you find them out more often, but I ordered this and the gentleman behind the counter was so confused. He was French and he asked, he's like, what are you doing with it? I think of this with my grandmother. So it is an interesting choice. But aperitifs generally, because they're meant to be drunk on their own, there aren't a lot of cocktails with them. So trying to find a cocktail to put together other than a Negroni was a little difficult. But this one is one that I think is really good, especially for the summer. It basically takes an entire lemon, and it's got this really wonderful punchy citrus flavor. So we'll start with a little bit about the Lié. Lié is considered a canquina. It contains quinine, and that's a bitter ingredient that was derived from a bark that was meant to fight malaria. I also think of gin in that family too, but canquinas include Dubonnet and Lié. And Dubonnet and Lié also both come in a red and a white. So that tends to be the commonality with the vermouths and with these. So we'll use Lié. And then the Suze is a gentian derived spirit. The gentian plant, Gentian, is a wildflower that grows in the Alps between France and Switzerland. And so gentian derived spirits, they're more than this, they're more common. Campari is one of them, my favorite Campari. And then the Aperol. And if you've seen that, that's the Aperol. So these have this beautiful kind of grapefruity sort of color to them. Originally, they were colored with cochineal beetles, which I found very interesting because cochineal had often been used as a pigment in art for paints and such. They don't use them anymore, and they don't use them anymore for the liqueurs, but not the liqueurs, but the aperitifs. But it's an interesting overlap. So to make our drink, I'm going to start with just a mixing glass and fill it with some ice. And then we're going to measure out. First thing I'm going to add is not an aperitif. This is, oh, interesting comment. Actually, cochineal is still used to color materials in Peru. I did not know that. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start off with gin, and we only need an ounce, so I'm not going to pour that quite all the way out. Ounce of gin. And then an ounce of the Lié Blanc. And the Lié Blanc is very popular to drink on its own. It has notes of candied orange and mint, which sounds a little strange, but it's actually really lovely. And then the last ingredients is just a half an ounce of the Suze. I can get this open. It's been a long while, clearly, since I've opened this. That would have been a good thing to have done before this. Oh my gosh. Well, imagine me with half an ounce of Suze in here. The last thing I would need is the lemon juice. And I always cut up a fresh lemon. So we'll take half a lemon and squeeze that in. Right. And then stir. And then this fun thing on your bar set, the strainer works really beautifully, especially when you have lemon to get the pulp and the seeds out. And then if you like, put a couple of ice cubes in, and then you can also squeeze a little more lemon into it to make it just that more pungent, if you want that on a summer day. And then that is your drink. It's, even with the Suze, like it's a lemony, very yellow drink. And it's, it's bright, it's cheery, but it does have that bitterness of an aperitif. So it is something you'd want to eat with foods, maybe crackers, cheese, some grapes, things like that. So that's a lot about aperitifs. And I'm going to pass this over to the next presenter, Mike Smanko, who's going to be making a drink called the Chelsea.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Mike Smanko, and I am a graduate of the School of Theater, and on the Alumni Society Board, I represent that school. So tonight we're in the vodka room here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about vodka. It is the most popular distilled spirit worldwide. Of course, I can understand why bourbon would be very popular, because bourbon is a native species here. It is our own specialty type of thing. But vodka worldwide is extremely popular. What does vodka mean? Well, it's actually, if we go to Slavic languages, voda or woda is the word for water in all of the Slavic languages. And if you put the diminutive feminine suffix on it, ka, it becomes vodka. So it's water. But of course, it is a fire water, as far as we know. It was developed in the early 1500s in the form that we drink it in today. And of course, three main countries fight over who had it first. They are, of course, Russia, Poland, and then in that order, Sweden. And the Swedish do make some good, tasty vodkas. In any case, what is it? It is a clear distilled ethyl alcohol, and you can make vodka out of just about any kind of vegetable product. It's often out of cereal grains, fruits, vegetables, and then it is cut with water. So what happens is in the cutting, in order to be considered true vodka, it must be 80 proof, which means 40% alcohol. So that means 60% is the water, and the water is a very important part of it. You need to have good water to make good vodka. There is an area called the Vodka Belt, and those are the countries, it's almost all of Eastern Europe, and most of them are at war right now, but it's Belarus, Estonia, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Norway, Iceland, Sweden, Ukraine, Finland, and Russia. And that area is the Vodka Belt. And I've traveled to many of those countries, and it truly is, it's the drink to have when you're there. Serving it, often frozen and served neat, which is a good way, or you can serve it on ice. Mixing it with a different liqueur, such as making a martini or a cosmopolitan or a white or black Russian. Mixing it with juice, and we've all had like or with something fizzy. We've had a vodka tonic or a screwdriver with orange juice. Or a Bloody Mary, very, very popular. There are flavored vodkas, which are infused with different flavors. And that's one that we have, we're actually using one of those today. This is by Vale, and it is one that is infused with mint and cucumber. So we will be using that in our drink today. Next is what are the popular brands? There's Belvedere, and Belvedere is made with rye. Grey Goose is made with French winter wheat. Tito's Handmade is made with corn. Kettle One is made with just wheat. Stolichnaya is a combination of wheat and rye grains. Svedka is winter wheat, and Haku is made with white rice. Which brand would be best? In actuality, since it is ethyl alcohol and the water is the most important part, unless you are drinking it pretty much straight or in a martini, if you're mixing it, a cheaper or a medium brand vodka, it's really up to your taste. It's using very expensive vodka to mix with fruit juice is just not necessarily, it doesn't change it. It really needs to be ethyl alcohol. So I recommend to anyone to just go out there and try a number of different ones. I find that a safe bet is a medium grade vodka like Sky, Stolichnaya, or Absolute. But experiment and try the ones that you like. So let's get to mixing our drink tonight. For that, we're doing something called the Chelsea, and the Chelsea was formulated first at Fred's Bar, which was part of Barney's New York, which was a clothing store, but it had a bar restaurant in it. Fred's is, and Barney's is maybe there, but I think it's just come back recently. But Fred's Bar is gone. But the drink remains, and that's why we're going to have it tonight. The Chelsea, for that we get some Thompson seedless grapes. I've already put them into a glass with a muddler and muddled them a bit to make a fresh grape juice. And then the next thing is we're going to use the infused vodka, which is the Vale. And for that, we need a full jigger. That same glass. And then we're using an elderflower liqueur. The one I'm using today is Driard, but you can also use Saint-Germain. Saint-Germain is actually a higher end, and I think that the Driard is just fine for a mixed drink. And for that, we're using a single ounce, putting that into our mixing bowl. And then we give that, again, a little stir, and we need a quarter lemon. So we will squeeze in nice quarter lemon squeeze juice, fresh juice. I think it's important always to use the fresh juice. And then let's add some ice to our shaker. Chill it. And let's give that a gentle shake. Really just to get it chilled. And you want to do this not too far in advance like this with the ice, because you don't want it too far watered down. I see we all seem to have the same bar implements. Being experienced artistic drinkers. I have a glass filled with halfway with ice, and we will pour our mixed drink in there. And then we fill the rest of the way with a sparkling water. For this, I'm using Poland Spring sparkling water, which has this one has a little bit of lemon, since we have a lemon juice base in there too. So it just adds a little bit of flavor. But I think the Poland Spring has better fizz keeping qualities than others. So put that in. Don't break the bubbles too much. Just give it a couple gentle stirs. And then garnish with the garnish of your choice. In this one, I've chosen to just do some Thompson seedless grapes, and you can either lay it across the top or let it float inside. And there is a nice tall drink to be able to have in the summertime, very refreshing. The elderflower liqueur gives it a very herbal taste, and the flavored vodka is extremely nice. If you didn't have the flavored vodka, there's no reason why you couldn't use regular vodka and muddle a little bit of mint or cucumber in it as well, and do the same sort of thing. So that is our drink. Cheers, everyone. I'm going to have a taste. Very good. And now we're going to hand off to Lynn, who will be doing bubbly, I believe.
Yes. Hey, everybody. My name is Lynn Smyers, and I'm an '84 A&A graphic design grad. If you have any questions, just let me know and we'll answer after I'm through. Tonight, we're going to make a Hugo. This refreshing Italian summer drink will help you celebrate the season. The Hugo originated in South Tyrol, Italy, in the Italian Alps. According to magazines Mixology and Der Spiegel, the beverage was created in 2005 by barman Roland Gruber and quickly spread beyond the shores of Italy to Austria, Switzerland, and Germany. Now cocktails using elderflower liqueur like this are popping up in drinks stateside, as we just saw Mike attest to with his demonstration. Now we have a little bit of history as well. Using elderflower liqueur and Prosecco, Prosecco is named after a village in Trieste, in the Italian region. Trieste shares a border with Slovenia and is in the heart of winemaking country. It dates back to the Roman era, as far back as 200 BC, and was first known as Puccino. The first documented mention was in a 1754 poem by Ario Acante. Similar to champagne, sparkling wines can't be made outside of their specific region to protect the characteristics associated with the Glera grape. It wasn't until the 1930s that boundaries of the region were outlined to protect production. You may have seen labels like this when picking out your favorite Italian wine at the store. Along the side, across the seal, this is DOC, which stands for Designation of Controlled Origin. Similar to the classification system in France, the Italian system is a guide for wine drinkers intended to make it easier to understand what you can expect from a bottle of wine that you're drinking. But the Italian system, developed in the 1960s, takes it a step further than the French. Hold on, I gotta speed up my little thing. It specifies not only the production area and methods for each wine, but also guarantees the quality and standard of certain wines which have to pass a government taste test. So when you see that label, it means you're guaranteed to get a true Italian quality wine. In recent years, Prosecco has exploded in popularity. The meteoric rise in popularity literally happened because some very clever winemaker recognized there was a gap in the market between expensive champagne and the lower quality sparkling wines such as Asti and Cava. Realizing this, the higher quality Prosecco filled that void. So I really appreciate a story like this. Since I'm a branding and marketing person, I like the idea that somebody realized, oh, we can figure out a way to make some money off of something that has existed for hundreds of years, but nobody really realized that it was a good way to have a nice drink without spending a fortune. So let's get drinking. I discovered a Hugo on a 2017 trip to Italy with my daughters. We discovered them in a bar in Rome and instantly fell in love, and we've been making them ever since. It's a nice way to reminisce about that trip when we share the love of the drink. Hopefully you can follow along, but it's a very simple drink to make. There's only 3 main liquid ingredients and mint and lime. So first we're going to start with an oversized ice cube. I like to do that because then your drink doesn't get diluted, especially if you're drinking them outside and if it's warm out. They're easy to find. You can get it on at Home Goods or Amazon or something like that. Then we're going to add 1 shot of Saint-Germain. And as Mike mentioned, this is kind of the top shelf version. You can use any kind of elderflower liqueur. So we're going to add that to the mix. It is a lovely flavor, and it is popping up a lot more as well. Then we're going to add 1 of Prosecco. And again, similar to the elderflower liqueur, you can buy any bottle. There are usually several varieties in your grocery store or wine store. So I think they taste very similar, so it doesn't really matter to me. Then we are going to use mint, and the way to get the optimal flavor, you smack the mint between your hands and it releases the scent and the flavors. So put that in there. And if you want to be like the bartenders that you pay expensive drinks for, you can also line your rim with the mint. It adds a little more flavor. Then we are going to add 1/2 of a lime. Again, this is the kind of drink based on what you like, whether you like it more sweet or more sour. You can add more lime, less lime, or adjust the ingredients for the liquid ingredients as well. But so I'm just going to put in 1/2 a lime. And then you just top it off with, again, some sparkling water, Poland Springs, another popular brand here this evening. Just a splash of that on top. And give it a good stir. Actually, let's put the lime in there for some added color. I could stir it now with my large ice cube. There we go. Just stir that around, and there you have it. A very easy mocktail version of this. There are some elderflower sparkling waters out there as well. And they taste very similar, but it's without the alcohol. So if you want to have that instead, it's a really easy way to have a very similar flavored drink. So cheers. Does anybody have any specific questions about this cocktail? It's really good if you haven't tried it. If not, I'm going to pass the baton to Morgan Pierce, and we'll see what he's going to make for us this evening.
Hello, thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Mike, and thank you, Kim. Those are all great cocktails. I hope for anybody who's not yet under the table, you're looking forward to making some more. Thanks to the votes earlier that voted bourbon most popular among this group. I hope we don't let you down this evening. Bourbon is one of my favorite spirits. So hopefully we can share some tips tonight that will allow you to perpetuate your enjoyment of it. Again, like I said, my name is Morgan Pierce. I'm a graduate of the School of Landscape Architecture. I'm coming to you from Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, hence no snow. So I'm sorry if you were struggling through unpleasant weather wherever you are. But at any rate, I wanted to give you a quick little intro to whiskey. Now, Pennsylvania, as many of you may know, was really heavy in the rye whiskey production back in the 1700s. And you may have learned about the whiskey rebellions back when you were in school. And then there was some migration towards Kentucky, where bourbon was made. I was introduced to whiskey as a state high student back in downtown State College by raiding my father's liquor cabinet of his scotch that smelled like Band-Aids, and then drinking Southern Comfort with my friends in various movie theaters downtown in high school, neither of which were memorable experiences in a positive sense. However, following my graduation from Penn State, I moved west, where I met a bevy of Southerners who introduced me to the finer points of bourbon. And that has been one of my favorite spirits ever since. Bourbon, the origins of it, the name comes from a family from the 13th century in France, and then obviously has evolved into the namesake for one of our favorite spirits, basically made in Kentucky, but allowed to be made anywhere. I think the critical things are bourbon needs to be made from 51% corn. It needs to be made in the USA, and it needs to be made in new charred oak barrels. There are some fluctuations on how long it needs to be aged to be called bourbon. Some bourbons can be called that after as little as several months, but usually you want to age it a few years to truly enjoy it. The bourbon that we're going to be using tonight is a favorite of mine called Blade and Bow that's made in Kentucky. For this recipe this evening, you can use any bourbon you like. And the origins of this drink, at least for me, it's something I created. Again, making friends with many Southerners, I was introduced to equestrian events following my years in State College, moving to the South and learning about steeplechase races and other things involving ponies. And apparently bourbon surrounds all of those events, and obviously enjoying many a mint julep, many a whiskey sour. I found that mint juleps are still, in fact, one of my favorite drinks and are great, usually for the first weekend in May when the what's it called in Louisville, the big horse race, you know what it's called. But at any rate, sometimes those drinks can be a little bit overbearing, and so for the later months of summer I wanted something a little lighter, and so adding some herbal influences from ginger. For those of you who haven't seen ginger in the wild, this is ginger, and adding a little lime, a little brightness, a little citrus to give it a little pungency, a little bit of edge, and maybe even to ward off some of the threats of scurvy if you're drinking a lot of these on the water. So tonight we're presenting this drink that I was calling the ginger lime cooler. However, for this event, I've christened it the Dean Heller. For those of you in the college who don't know, Dean Heller was the dean of the School of Fine Arts when it merged with the School of Architecture back in the early 60s. So he was one of the founders of our august program. He went on to be a famous printmaker and found a lot of other arts programs across the United States, but he seemed like such a Renaissance man when it came to the arts. I don't know if he actually drank or enjoyed bourbon, but regardless, this is dedicated to him and his legacy. So we've got some tools here. We've got some glasses. I've got some old-fashioned glasses. You can also use Collins glasses for this. You could also use mint julep cups, which would be perfectly acceptable. We've got various measuring vessels for the liquids we're putting in. We've got freshly cut limes and some extra limes if necessary. We've got some fresh mint. We've got ice, obviously, handy shaker, some ice tongs, and some club soda. Now, for those of you who might want to do a shortcut, if you're short on time and don't have time to make the simple syrup, which I do recommend, and is rather easy, but if you're running around trying to put together a party or something, you can substitute ginger ale for the combination of the simple syrup and the club soda. But again, I encourage everybody to go for the long version of this and try all of the aspects. So to begin with, we've got some ice. We're gonna put some ice first of all, and pardon me, I'm not gonna use the tongs. They're just slow. I'm gonna use my hands since I'm the only one drinking this, and I think my hands are clean. Put some ice in the shaker, and at the same time, also put some ice in my glass. Following that, we'll put some mint, and the recipe calls for 5 to 6 thumb-sized leaves of mint. And again, the mint you find in your garden or at your store or walking along a pathway may vary in size. And you may have you may be a mint lover. You may only like a little bit of mint. So please temper it to your preference. So the mint goes in there, the ice is in there. I've already squeezed some of the limes, and so the lime juice will go in here, as will the ginger simple syrup that I've already made. And then to that, we'll add a healthy 2 ounces of bourbon. And again, this could be to your liking. If you like a lot more bourbon, you can have more bourbon. To make the mocktail of this drink, just exclude the bourbon because all of the other elements work very well together. Now the key here, we obviously don't want to put the club soda in yet because if you did, it would explode all over the place, and that would not be very pleasant. Now we don't need a lot of shaking. We just want to bruise the mint ever so slight. There's not a lot of varying viscosity liquids in here that need to be blended so thoroughly. It's really just a gentle shake to get that mint essence imparted. And then I always strain it because sometimes when you do shake it up, the mint can tend to break apart, again, depending on the freshness of your leaves or the size of the leaves themselves. Now, I usually fill it up somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the glass, which leaves a little extra room for the club soda. I'm using Fever Tree club soda. Again, this is just a readily accessible variety. It doesn't have any of the unfortunate bad sugars in it, so I tend to prefer its taste, which is relatively mild. With that, we'll add a garnish of lime and a sprig of mint. And there you have it, the gingerly lime cooler, AKA the Dean Heller. Cheers. Ah, delicious. And with that, I will turn it over to Peter Margatai and the Bee's Knees. Have a great evening.
All right, thank you, Morgan. I see that there is a question about simple syrup. And Joyce answered that question about how to store it, and you say refrigerate. I actually never refrigerate my simple syrup. It's sugar, and sugar doesn't spoil, so I don't actually think you need to, but it can't hurt if you do. Anyway, so let's jump into gin. That is my section, and I am a bourbon lover. I am coming to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is sort of the one of the origins of rye and bourbon production. But I'm moving out of my bourbon season and I'm moving into my gin season. So here's the recipe for the bee's knees. Before we get into the history, I want to make sure that everybody who's following along has their glass ready. Okay, so this is a martini glass. You don't have to use a martini glass, but it's important, whatever kind of glass you have, that it has a stem, because this drink is served up, meaning that there's no ice in it. And so you want to make sure that the heat from your hand doesn't warm up your drink. So it's important to have a glass with a stem. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some ice And we're just going to put it into our glass. And that is going to allow it to chill. Just realized I don't have an extra glass going. That's all right. We'll work this out. So gin. The key ingredient in gin is the juniper berry. Essentially, it's vodka, except for the juniper berries are infused into it, and that's what created contemporary gin. Now, this all starts back. The earliest record of this is in 1055, where Benedictine monks from Salerno, Italy, came up with a sort of a a tonic wine that infused juniper berries in it, and they called it Compendium Solernita. And this was just a cure-all. If you had something that ailed you, you were sick in any way, indigestion to whatever, you took some of this this Compendium Solernita, and it would fix you right up. By 1650, Europe was suffering from the plague. And this gentleman, Franciscus Sylvius in Holland, decided that he was going to come up with a way to cure this. So he goes back to the old records. He finds this Compendium Solernita and the juniper berries, and he comes up with his own formula, and he calls it Giniver. Now, Giniver essentially is what we still consider gin. The name was shortened, and that's why we call it gin today. By the late 1600s, people, whether they were sick or not sick, decided they loved gin, and they were drinking bucket loads of it. In England, it became a real problem. In fact, they called this the Gin Craze. At that time, in the late 1600s, it was cheaper to buy a pint of gin than it was to buy a pint of beer. So they were just drinking it like crazy, and it was causing all kinds of problems in society. And essentially, it was like the opioid epidemic or the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1600s. It didn't help that there were no standards for making gin, and people were adding all kinds of terrible things to it, such as turpentine and sulfuric acid. And I even read that they put sawdust in it, which I don't know how you wouldn't realize you had sawdust in your gin, but I guess they were doing that. So to try to calm things down, in 1736, they enacted the Gin Act. And as part of the Gin Act, they changed the tax structure of the production of these products. And by virtue of that, beer now was going to be less expensive than gin. And so they were really trying to move society towards drinking beer, because they were like, oh, beer's better for you. It's not going to hurt you. But it wasn't enough that they created these monetary incentives. They also created kind of like a propaganda campaign. And one of the works of art that I want to share with you are two etchings that were created by, hold on here, see if I can get this to work. There we go. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. They were created by a gentleman named William Hogarth. And if you look here, hold on here, I'm moving my stuff out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. There's an etching on the right called Gin Lane, and the etching on the left is called Beer Street. So if you look closely at Gin Lane, it is just a terrible place. I mean, you've got this mother here. She's all out of sorts. She's letting her baby drop over the handrail. You got this corpse just sitting here. If you look into the background, there's all kinds of fights. There's people, there's little children. You can see children drinking gin back here. There's just all kinds of nastiness. Everything, the buildings are falling over. I think this is like a coffin company, and there's somebody being laid into a coffin. So it's obvious that Gin Lane is a terrible, terrible place, and you want to avoid it at all costs. Now, if you go to the other side of the screen, you look at Beer Street, and Beer Street is a completely different place. I mean, here everybody is really well fed, and they've just got, they're just happy. They got their steins of beer, and there's this guy painting this beautiful street sign, and he's smiling and happy, and there's a person being carried around in one of those chairs that you carry people. I learned the name of that. That's it's called a sedan. I just learned that recently. So somebody's in a sedan, and yeah, it's nice and it's pleasant, and everybody's healthy and happy. And clearly, Beer Street is where you want to be. So moving into the 1800s, 1830. Gin kind of was under control, but it didn't lose its popularity. It was especially popular with the British Navy. And at that time, they were sailing all over the world, and they were colonizing all kinds of places. And they found themselves in India, colonizing India. And one of the big problems in India was malaria. So in order to keep the sailors and soldiers from catching malaria, they filled them to the gills with quinine. And Kim mentioned quinine earlier. That comes from a bark from a tree in Central America, and it keeps the malaria from hurting you. Now, the problem with quinine is that it's really bitter. It's just terrible tasting. So these British sailors realized, okay, well, we got this gin and we got this quinine. We put those together, put a little soda water in there. And by the way, soda water and quinine is what we call tonic today. And oh yeah, on board, there's all these limes because, they don't want us getting scurvy either. So let's squirt a lime in there. And lo and behold, it's delicious and refreshing. And that is the origin of the gin and tonic. But we're not here to learn about the gin and tonic. We're here to learn about the bee's knees. The bee's knees was founded in 1921 by the first bar manager of the Ritz Hotel in Paris, France. His name was Frank Meyer. And apparently Frank Meyer, I did my research, he was a really dynamic guy. And I guess he was part of the French resistance during the Second World War, and he saved a bunch of Jews. And he was just a really incredible man that you should look up sometime after this program. But he came up with the bee's knees. And then I also learned that the bee's knees became mostly popular in the United States. This is during Prohibition, by and large because the terrible gin that was being made, they needed something to cover up the flavor. So the ingredients that go into the bee's knees does a pretty good job of that. So how do we make a bee's knees? At this point, your glass is still chilling. We're going to let that chill a little bit. I'm going to tell you some of the ingredients that you need for that. First and foremost, you need gin. Now, this is a nice English dry gin. I'm sorry, London dry gin, and that's a style of gin. There's all kinds of gins out there. London dry is just a style. That's the one I prefer. And then if you don't want to drink gin and you want to substitute it with something that doesn't have alcohol in it, I would recommend, this is called Seedlip. It's Spice 94. And I'm actually going to use this. I'm actually off of booze for a month. So it just kind of coincidentally landed during the Drinks by Design. But I'm gonna use this. This is no substitute for gin. It doesn't taste quite the same, but it is a spirit. And all they're doing is they just keep distilling it again and again and again until they distill all the alcohol out of it. But it is still a spirit, and the flavors and all the ingredients that were infused in it, they stay in the drink. So we're going to use that. The other thing that you're going to need is honey simple syrup. Now this is 1 part honey, 1 part water. Super easy to make. You can heat it up in a saucepan to get them to combine. You can just throw it in the microwave. It just, zap it, and that'll help it combine. But once you have this, I put it in a little squeeze bottle like this, and it'll keep you for a while. The other thing that you're going to need is a lemon. There's not much to this drink, fresh lemon. And then you're going to need a lemon squeezer. Now, everybody that has been presenting previously, they've all had lemon squeezers like this, and I've got one too. However, because this is Drinks by Design, I'm going to try to use my brand new Philippe Starck lemon squeezer. And if you don't know Philippe Starck, he's a French designer. He came up with this in the 90s, actually, and it's wildly popular. And I just got one, not just for this, but just because I think it's cool. But we're going to try it out. Supposedly it doesn't work well, but we'll see. Okay, so your glass should be chilled by now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump that. We're going to dump the ice out. All right, and actually, you could have kept it in there a little longer, but anyway, it's nice and cool and frosty now. So the next thing you want to get, oh, I forgot to mention, you need a shaker, and preferably grab yourself a shaker that has a little strainer on the top. If you don't have a strainer, you can grab one of these strainers. That'll work as well. But this one's nice. It has a strainer kind of built in. So you want to fill that with ice. All right, once you got your ice in your shaker, the next thing we're going to do is get our jigger. Now, one thing that I think should be mentioned is that not all jiggers are the same. Most jiggers, well, I should say they all have two compartments. There's a big compartment and there's a small compartment. The big chamber generally, typically is 1 ounce and 3/4. And then the other one, I'm sorry, 1.5 ounces, ounce and 3/4. I can't remember now. And then this is, I think it's 1.5 ounces and then 3/4. However, this jigger is actually 2 ounces and 1 ounce. So make sure if you get a recipe and it says a jigger of this and a jigger of that, or make sure that you understand what the ounces are so that you can actually measure it properly. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my fake gin. You can take your real gin. And you're going to put 2 ounces of that into your jigger and pour it into the shaker very carefully, just like that. All right. And then the next thing you want to do is take your honey simple syrup, and you get half. I'm sorry, you get 1 ounce of that into the recipe. Now I like. There we go. That's 1 ounce, and then I like a little extra. So I usually kind of squirt a little extra in there, just to make it a little bit sweeter. All right. So the next thing, get your lemon. You want to cut it in half. And then before you squeeze the lemon out, take a little bit, you're going to cut a little bit of the rind off of that. That's going to be your twist at the end. So just kind of shave that off. Here it is, just like that. And then put that aside. You're going to be using that in a minute. Okay. So let's see if this will work. So here's my fancy designer squeezer, and I'm going to just make this go like this. Oh, it's actually working pretty well. Now, you're supposed to put in, I think it's 1/2 ounce of lemon juice, but I just put in half a lemon. It's too hard to measure this out. You just kind of put it all in there, and it usually works out pretty well. So there's that. Let that drip off. Nice. It actually worked great. Way better than I expected. Okay. Now you get your cap, you put the cap on the shaker, and then you start to shake. Now, everybody's been very subtle with their shaking today, but I'm going to tell you, you want to shake this, like shake it like you need it, because that's part of the drink. When you're shaking, you're creating air and you're introducing that into the drink, and you're also diluting the ice. So it's important that water is being one of the ingredients in the cocktail. You got to make sure that it gets in there. You got to shake it for a little while. It's kind of like cooking. If you don't cook something long enough, it's not going to turn out. Okay, good. I think we did a good job. All right. I've got my frosted glass. I've got my shaken ingredients. I'm going to pour that in. Just like that. All right. And then the last little bit of this is you take your lemon rind. You want to squeeze the oils into it, just like that. Kind of rub it around the rim. Drop it in like that. And you just made a bee's knees. Oh, that's good. This is a really good summer drink. It's very refreshing. All right, so are there any questions? Does anybody, hold on, let me get my chat thing open so I can see a little bit better. There we go. Oh, thank you, Joyce. You're too kind. She said I was the bee's knees. Does anybody, I should have mentioned this before we started, in case anybody had questions for any of the presenters today, you could have just added that into the chat as we were going, but I forgot to mention that. So if you have any questions now, that would be, now's a good time to ask those, and we'll do our best to answer them. What are your favorite BK riffs? I don't know what BK is. Oh, okay. Somebody's asking about Sue's, where you can get Sue's.
This is Kim Henriksen. I went to my local liquor store, the one that we typically go to in our shopping center by the grocery store. It wasn't anything crazy, any special spirits supplier. And I asked them if they could order it. And apparently they get orders in pretty regularly of anything. And so I would imagine that, you know, any of your local liquor stores, you know, I would probably look for a place that does sell some of these other ones like Campari and Pastis and Aperol and Lié, just to make sure they do have some section for that. But I would think you should be able to order it somewhere close by.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm trying to keep up with all the chats as they're coming in. Mostly thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you everybody for joining us, for taking the time out of your day and enjoying us, helping us enjoy our presenting this to you. I also want to thank my fellow presenters from the Alumni Society. Thank you so much. Special thanks to Kim Henriksen for the slideshow. And you don't know, but there was a lot of research and you know, permission had to be obtained to use the material. So thank you for all that effort. Lynn Smyers, also thank you very much for the recipe book. It's fantastic. She just outdid herself. I'm gonna read this part because I want to make sure that it's right. If you haven't already, please check out the links on the last page of the recipe PDF. And if you've misplaced that booklet, don't worry, we'll get it to you after the presentation. Tonight has been really, really fun for us. This is the second time we got to do this. Maybe we'll get to do it again in the future. But I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the meaningful work that we do is supporting our students and advocating for arts and design at Penn State. And for any of you that want to join the Alumni Society, the Alumni Association, and take advantage of all their benefits and opportunities, we encourage you, since it is the biggest and the best alumni association in the world. So with that, thank you very much. Good night and cheers.